What is an appraisal and why it's needed? Good morning. This is Rimo Rafi with another Real Talk live episode this Friday morning. I have with me Steve Hill with Anaverdi Appraisal. Thank you so much for joining me, Steve. I know you're out of town and we appreciate you being here. And can you introduce yourself and tell us what's an appraisal and why it's needed?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking me to do this because I think it's really important for real estate agents and everyone in this industry to be fully informed about the appraisal process. I opened Anaverdi Appraisal in 2004. Matter of fact, Hadi Rafe was my very first appraisal assignment came from her. Uh, and in these times and in this market, it is essential that you have an appraisal on the property. An appraisal is nothing more than an estimate or an opinion of value. It's really that simple. It's an opinion of value of someone who is licensed by the state and is mandated to do certain hours of continuing education to maintain that license and keep it in a good status for the community. And the importance of having an appraisal, as everyone probably found out in 2007 when the market actually crashed and the banks realized that they have a whole lot of problems on their hands because all of a sudden they are owners of distressed properties and the values were plummeting. So and people were doing all kinds of things to take advantage of the system. You had shysters and game players and investors who were trying to do everything they could to save their necks or basically save their investments because the market was plummeting because of an oversupply, with everyone basically being forced out of their properties and some people just walking away from their properties. So basically, I kind of like to think of myself as the appraisal police force, because basically you're keeping everyone honest. You're trying to keep people from breaking the law by being, too greedy or, just asking ridiculous prices. And then all of a sudden you have a weak appraiser come in and give you whatever value you want because, they want more business from you. But
well, things have changed from the past. That's why it's, with the requirements now that the real estate agents cannot kind of interfere with the third party, because you guys are third party and the lender cannot interfere too. So that route and that changed big time from what we had back in 2007, 2008, and that's what caused 2007, 2008. So I feel like it's way more regulated now than it's been. It's just we are in a crazy market. We're in a different
and you need regulation now.
Of course,
it's imperative we have regulation now, because ever since during the Clinton administration, when they totally dismantled the Glass-Steagall Act, which kept banks from becoming casinos and gambling with everyone's money, that kind of went away. And then there was other forces under the George Bush administration who wanted everyone to have a house, and I think that's when most of the gimmicky loans and the stated incomes and you got $5 down, you can get a $300,000 house, and you see things like that. So with your introduction of the Frank Dodd Act, which brought us the AMCs, which are appraisal management companies that put a buffer. They put distance between the pressure of the lenders, who just like a disinterested party. They don't care. They just want the thing to come in, and they really don't care about the value.
So now,
they weren't really scrutinizing appraisals that hard before the mortgage meltdown in 2007.
So speaking of the value how kind of it's we all know it's a crazy market. I mean, we've seen properties going crazy prices, way above that what they are listed at. So from your side and appraising properties on a regular basis, what is your biggest challenges right now? What are you seeing? Like when I'm running comps for my clients, sometimes I see properties all over the place, $70,000-$80,000 difference. And sometimes their model match. Like, how do you kind of determine or appraise or advise the seller or your buyer to offer or to sell their property at a certain price when you have comps 70, 80, 90,000 varies and you are still within quarter of a mile or half a mile distance?
Yeah, that kind of disparity is what you know it's what affects and it's what we spend the most time on, trying to rationalize why would that house sell. And for one thing we ask is, how did they get it to appraise? You got a model match, two model matching properties, and one went for 80,000 more. And you look at these properties and you know that something isn't right. So, sometimes you just have to throw something out as being a bad comp, and that's the problem with some of the appraisers. If we don't stick to our professionalism and do what we're supposed to do as appraisers, all you need is one bad comp in an area and it throws everything out of whack, because now you've got you got listing agents running to you or meeting you at appraisal inspections, and they have that one only comp they have is the one that sold for a ridiculous value, only comp they have, and they want to give you that to show you as an indication of value. But they don't really understand that you cannot use one comp in an
Right.
appraisal report.
Right. You need 3 comps.
Right. Minimum.
Yes.
So you bring that one comp and I can't find or justify supporting the value with like the 2 other comps. And then you might have these crazy adjustments on those 2 other counts, those 2 other comps. And to me, that would be a red flag to the underwriter, because it's like, okay, where'd you get those other 2 comps? Did you move out of that specific tract of homes and go in and look for something higher in another place? Why did you have to go outside of the typical customary 1 mile radius? Why are you at 2 miles over here in a different neighborhood to support your value when you could have selected 8 or 9 comps that is more similar and closer proximity to the subject property?
And speaking of value, again, when we are sitting with the seller, we're advising them to kind of repairs, remodeling, what's the best return on their investment if they choose to do any repairs or any remodeling. What, from your point of view, when you are appraising a property, what brings the most value to any home that you are appraising, and what the biggest point that you look for? And adjustment that you make between a property that's not upgraded to a property that's, fully upgraded.
Yeah, well, of course.
Because like a seller, if the seller has a pool, oh, my house has a pool, it's $100,000 more. But it doesn't work that way. Even if you spend $100,000 in your backyard, that doesn't mean when you sell the property, you're going to get that $100,000 back. So can you kind of like talk a little bit about that and just educate the audience from your point of view as an appraiser?
Yeah, from my point of view, when I initially, they have a thing called street appeal, as observed from the street. When you first walk up to a property, you don't want to see chipping paint. You don't want to see any deferred maintenance. You want it to look good from the street, where somebody say, "Oh, I can see myself living here." But what I consider the most influential value influencing characteristic of any property is going to be the kitchen and bathrooms. Are they updated? Do you have a dishwasher? Do you have granite, quartz, vinyl, laminate, fake wood laminate? I mean, what is the quality of your upgrades and your modernizations? I mean, I could walk into any house and pretty much tell you what decade they remodeled their kitchen in. So for really good appeal, you got to have that kitchen together, man, because women are the primary indicators of which property they would like to purchase for their family to live in. So women, unfortunately, this is old stereotypical, but women cook in the kitchen and they want a nice kitchen, but men cook also. But just going predominant numbers, I would say more women enjoy cooking than men. So you got to have that kitchen looking nice. You got to have the bathrooms updated, modernized, and then everything else. Just make sure it's painted. Maybe you need to update your multiple tone shag carpet from the 1970s. People look at that and go, ugh, just want to throw up. So you got to modernize. You got to keep your property up. That way, when you go and get your house refied or you sell it, you've done everything to keep your property value, at the top end of the market. Then you don't have a complaint. What I don't like to see are the situations when, two houses on the same street could be right across the street from each other. One is fully updated, modernized, great street appeal, no chipping paint, no deferred maintenance, no cars parked in the front yard. And you have another one that is dated, hasn't really been remodeled since the year of construction, and they somehow expect to get the same value for theirs as the one who people have, invested in their investment to keep the value up. To me, that is unfair. It's basically like stealing. I'm going to steal from my neighbor's upgrades and I ain't going to put nothing. I'm going to take trips to Hawaii and I'm going to go to Vegas every couple of months and blow my money there. And then you want the same thing, someone who's invested in their property, you want that same value. It doesn't work like that.
What about, can you appraise a property? Can you comp a property from having no pool to having a pool? Because I had that issue before with an appraiser, that he could not take a pool home that was the same model match, same thing as my property. The only thing, my property did not have a pool, the other property had a pool. And it was not, my argument was not to have him appraise, go higher in value. My argument was to take that comp under consideration, adjust the pool. So is that something that you guys avoid? If there is a property with no pool, you cannot compare it to a pool property, or how does that work?
There's an adjustment pool, and there's techniques that we use. The primary one is known as paired sales analysis. Paired sales analysis. That's where you're putting one comp on the grid right next to another comp on the grid. One might have a pool, one doesn't. So you are going to use the depreciated value of that swimming pool and apply it as a plus adjustment to the comp that doesn't have a pool, or a minus, which would mean inferior. So you subtract the price or the value of that depreciated value from that pool home, and you should come out pretty close to what the value should be.
And it's the same
just
thing.
Because you spend $100,000 on a pool, if the market doesn't show you, or the market doesn't reflect, that's a demonstrable expression of value. If the market doesn't reflect that your pool is worth $100,000, trust me, you're not going to get it, because the grid, when you put those comps on there, numbers don't lie.
Right. And with speaking of value, it's the same thing with upgraded kitchen versus non-upgraded kitchen, bathroom versus non-upgraded bathrooms. So it kind of
quartz and granite compared to maybe basic white ceramic tile that the builder installed.
Okay. And now we're seeing with all the conversion that's been happening, I want to talk a little bit about non-permitted conversion versus a permitted conversion. So now, how do the appraiser, when you go in and appraise a property, and we're seeing a lot of non-permitted stuff out there, how do you handle that, and how do you take that under consideration when it comes to your report?
Yeah, it's sad to say this, but it depends on who the lender is. Like for FHA lets you get away with a lot of unpermitted stuff, especially if it can be, if you can gain access, access to it. You know, it depends on who will let you value it as GLA, which is gross living area, and who won't. Some lenders will, some people won't. I know FHA is seems to me a little bit looser than conventional loans, but it really just depends on who you're doing the loan for. I really wish the industry itself would come up with something that is more standardized, so make it simple, everyone understand it. Because when I went to appraisal school, my instructor just kept reiterating and emphasizing that if you don't have a permit, you can't value it as living area. And the garage conversions now, I've noticed that, that magical statement we make, if it was built in a workmanlike manner with no health or safety issues readily observable by the appraiser, and then voila, that language, then okay, we'll accept it as living. But now you don't understand, or a lot of agents don't understand. Now you don't have a garage. So you're going to be at a deficit there, because the other comps I use most likely is going to have a 2 or 3 car garage. So, where do you make it fair?
Okay, so it's like it weighs itself out, because the question came in: how much value do you add to an appraisal with a legal converted garage? So kind of like, does it weigh itself out when you have 2-3 car garage that's usable versus a converted garage? Is it kind of like you adjust it to the same value?
No, using the cost approach, gross living area is going to be more value than say if it's a garage and it's unpermitted. So we give it value as garage space, and we disclose that it has been converted in a workmanlike manner, but without permits, I don't really being able to justify giving it the full value. So, most people have a carport. After they do that garage conversion, they'll have some type of carport. I mean, you can get credit for two carport spaces and just about catch up to where you should be. But
what about Steve, what about ADUs now? We're seeing a lot of ADUs, like,
yeah, and the laws changed about that, and people are trying to convert this. I would just recommend, whatever you're going to convert or build, make sure you get permits on it. Because one day you're probably going to want the full value. So make sure you deal with the bureaucracy of our system. Go down, get the permits, have it inspected by the city, so you can achieve the maximum ROI on your investment.
So let me ask you this: if you have a property that you're appraising 3,000 single family versus a 3,000, but it's an ADU included, that's the total square footage. What kind of like the difference in value would that be, having an ADU versus having just that one single family?
Yeah, well, that kind of depends on the owner, and there's six or seven different types of values, but there's a thing called value in use. That means you make that property the way you want it to meet your specific needs as a dwelling. So, three or four people could come along and they could all have varying opinions about the usage. So, you know, the way I look at it is when there's an ADU, you have increased that property's utility because now you have other options. You could rent it out and generate an income stream if that's what you want to do, or you could just have it for, say, like a guest house or a mother-in-law quarters, all depending on that specific owner, how the value is going to be translated. But basically, from the appraisal aspect, you're appraising and you're looking, if a house has an ADU, you're going to pick a comp with the same one. Again, paired sales analysis. If you put those two up there and see that they're about the same, they got the same market value, and someone was willing to pay contract price. Now you can establish that having a ADU actually brings more value. So it all goes back
Oh,
to specific need and
or
usage
use.
of that property.
Got it. Got it. And from your experience, let's talk about little rural areas because those are hard to comp. Like
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you go, especially in the Antelope Valley, if you go to Avenue D, I just sold one and it was super hard to kind of come up with comps.
Mm-hmm.
How far can you go with rural area and what do you compare it to? Because sometimes you have to go super far to kind of come up with
Yeah.
the value.
Yeah. You telling me all of that stuff from Avenue A down to Avenue H and those modulars and horse properties and acreage and horse facilities, it all gets a little tricky. But typically on an FHA appraisal in a rural area, you are allowed to go 10 miles out. And in our area, if you have to go 10 miles out and you can't find anything, then it's not worth it. I mean, you go and look for something that's logical, something that makes sense, if you're trying to support a certain value. But typically, when you're searching for comps on a complex property, rural areas, 10 miles out.
10 miles out. Okay. And we are seeing a lot of houses that they're being converted into safe housing, uh, healthcare facilities. How do you guys comp those properties? Because I mean, I've experienced a few myself.
Yeah, I just did one over on just south of Avenue K, 20th Street West, assisted living facility, with everything, basically everything they could do to get everything in the house to look like a bedroom. So they can, that generates income for them. So, but for the most part, unless they've made some really costly changes or, they stray away from something that looks like a typical home. But for the most part, all the ones I've done, you know, only they put in maybe extra handrails or they put in these very elaborate fire because to make it to code for whatever usage they put in these fire extinguishers and you know smoke detectors, carbon monoxide detectors, but for the most part you I noticed that you really don't have to change very much. You just got to have like bedroom space for the occupants of those. So it's basically valued the same.
Same.
Unless I see something that would necessitate you spending, absorbing the amount of money to remove it and turn it back to the property for its intended use would be single family residence. Unless I see something that would be really costly, then I would probably make an adjustment for it.
Okay. And Steve, we've been seeing in our area a lot of appraisers come in from way far to
And
appraise
that,
our properties.
mhm,
And they don't know the area. Sometimes they're appraising, a townhome, comparing it to a single family home. And so I can go on, I can brag on this forever because that's a very intense subject for me. But regardless, it just like, how far do you go yourself to appraise properties? And if you do, like, what is the um, procedure that you take? What is your experience of the appraising properties way outside of the area? Because I
yeah,
mean, knowing the area, it's super important to know what's
right.
going on. I had so many arguments with appraisers coming from Orange County to appraise properties in Santa Clarita and the Antelope Valley. I'm like, and they have
Mm.
no idea. They're asking us to provide some information, which I don't think that I believe there should be some regulations when it comes to appraisers appraising way different area, because it is super, super important. It's different, like appraisers like you, that they are in the area on a regular basis appraising properties left and right, when you have just a random appraisal that pops in 3 hours away and you jump to appraise the property. So what's your take on that?
Okay, listen, this is an easy one, and it's one that I could go on, for an extended period of time too, because according to USPAP, which is Universal Standards of uh, Professional Appraisal Practices, you have to demonstrate geographical competence when you're in a specific market area. That's why anymore I don't really have to go out of the Antelope Valley, but sometimes I take a few for my clients down in Santa Clarita and that area, and Acton and Newhall and all that stuff there where no one wants
But
to
that's,
go.
you're still close. You're still
Yeah,
close. You're
yeah,
still
it's still
close.
close. I
Yeah.
understand. But we're supposed to have geographical competence. That means being familiar with a specific market area. And if you got the first key is a lot of people don't have access to material or data sources that will create credible results. And you got to have credible results. So if you're coming up to the Antelope Valley and you have no access to GAVAR and you got to ask agents for comps, then that should raise a red flag for you. Go, nope, we want to get a local appraiser. We want someone that knows the market area, that is familiar with all the value influencing, characteristics of this city. Maybe they want to be close to the mall. Maybe they want to be close to the water park. And some people don't know that. Maybe they want to be in a certain school district. So you got to know where those school districts are. That's what geographical competence is. You got to be able to understand that everyone's not on city waters. There are mutual water well companies that they're on a different system per se. And if you're not from the area, you're probably not going to get that information, and put it in your report and make statements that reflect certain things, septic, who's on septic, who's not, da da da, that kind of thing. But this is a rule that I think should be adhered to strictly. But all of the lenders, I don't know what they do, what or why. But
What's
hey, I had someone come up from my house to appraise my house, VA loan, from Torrance, California. And
We're
I'm
seeing
like,
that a lot. Yes.
what the hell are you doing in the AV appraising properties? And you know where I live at. I
What's
I have a view home. This lady didn't even adjust for a view.
right?
So
And
I
this
was,
is what's
yeah,
yeah. View, you cannot miss a view. I mean,
exactly.
no matter where you're from. Um,
Right.
what? How? Why? Why would appraisers need the purchase contract when they go out for property? Like, why do we always get asked for the purchase contract for?
Because we have to analyze the contract to find out the condition of the sale. Is it, an arm's length transaction? Is the son selling to the father, or the mother selling to a cousin? Where that relationship may influence the price of the value. So we need to know that.
Does the value varies from a purchase versus refi versus just a regular consumer wants a professional appraisal to kind of know what their property is worth?
No, that the property value will not fluctuate depending on the client. It will not fluctuate. That opinion of value that's given on the effective date of the report, and the effective date of the report will be the day that property was inspected. That property value is established for that specific day. If it's very important, effective date. That's when we inspect the property. So if you do something after that, or if you have all these great plans into putting in like a Las Vegas style Olympic pool, and we don't care, because this value we're giving you is for the day we're at the property doing the inspection.
And we see a lot of sellers now with today's market. They wanna go out ahead of time and get a professional appraiser before they put their property on the market. Most likely, and this is mostly a lender, not from the appraisal side, that they cannot use that appraisal report because the lender has to order the appraisal.
Right.
So what in general, like, what's your biggest challenge right now with the market that we are currently in right now?
The biggest challenge right now is it would appear to me the biggest challenge is when the seller of a home sets the price instead of the real estate professional listing agent, who should have a thorough knowledge and understanding of that market area and what the homes are going for. And then they come along and they let the seller tell them what they want. And they know it's out of the possibility of being appraised at that value, because, most homeowners think they have the best house on the block, which sometimes is not the case. So, yeah, the most important thing is for the real estate professional to not, not give up his professionalism, education, and knowledge to a uninformed seller who sets a ridiculous price. And now someone has to come in with
But here's the case, Steve. In this market, I mean, the sellers are not setting up the price. Honestly, it's the buyer, because even though if us as real estate agents go out there and advise our client where we need to be, we end up when we come to the closing table, it's ending up way above what we listed at. And that's what's driving the market up. It's the buyer's demand. It's the scarcity that we're seeing. And it's just buyers are willing and able to buy and put the difference, even if the property is not appraised. Like, we've seen 60, 70, 80, 100, so on and so forth.
Yeah, well, that's a market force. You have to pay attention to market forces. When you have those limited days of market exposure on the market, where, I was doing appraisals here, and I just noticed that I don't have one property that has been on the market in my analysis. I don't have one property that was on the market for over 20 days. That's a market force, and it has to be taken into consideration, and giving some verbiage in the report to try to explain that people are coming in with appraisal contingencies, and they're willing to pay the $30,000-$40,000 more. That's a force on the market. That means the market can expand to higher values because it's been dictated by buyers, by people willing to pay that. So, they basically set the market value for homes when, they're willing to pay. It shows that there's people
That's
out there willing to pay that price, and they set the market value with those high values, the
right.
market price.
Like you said, I mean, we don't, I mean, it's the demand and the low inventory and the low interest rate what's driving
Yeah.
the higher prices, and people are willing to put in and purchase the property at. So what do you see right now? Do you see more properties coming up? Do you see like you're more busy than you were before? Like what would you say this quarter, this year, what had happened different than last year?
I've noticed a constant increase in property values. It's like one year it's up like 30%. And that's since the pandemic. I've been so busy since this pandemic. And there are reasons for it, and it's the market. And yeah, all of those problems you come with the expectancy of, I want that value, oh no, I won't settle for nothing less than that value, and then having people having to come in with a difference. But it's been a wild roller coaster ride, and I'm starting to think that those low interest rates and the scarcity of property, single family homes, and the builders not really building at a pace to keep pace with the market. It's all been very influential.
Yeah.
And to me, I think it's like creating another perfect storm for a mortgage meltdown,
Yeah.
because at some point this has to stop.
It's got to go somewhere, right?
Yep, either up or down.
Well, COVID created different feeling for a home. Just people, they moving from condos when we wanted to live like fast life and live in a condo in and out. Now we're spending way more time in our houses and our homes more than ever. We want that backyard, we want that big yard, we want that pool for entertainment, we want that big kitchen. So now we want it all because that's what we are spending most of our time in. So I believe that's a big factor too, because you see a lot of people moving from the cities to come to the Antelope Valley, to come
Right.
to rural area in the Antelope Valley. I've never sold
Yeah.
properties out in Avenue D and
Mhm.
Avenue A like before, and people are excited about it. Like, so
Yeah.
it's a
Yeah.
big difference now.
Yeah. This COVID it has made people reevaluate where they spend a predominant days of their lives at in their homes. It has brought a greater appreciation for where people live at. People go like, well, I'm stuck in the house. Maybe I want to do some fixing up now. I
Right.
want this to be nice. This is where I live at. I know Lowe's and Home Depot, they haven't
They're
they haven't been
busy.
hurt during this pandemic.
They're busy.
Hmm.
In your opinion, and there is a question that came in as well, how to dispute a bad appraisal, and
Okay.
what's the us as real estate agents, if we are hit by a bad, and we know it's not a good appraisal, and he put comps that they're way out, and we have local comps that he could have used or she could have used, how can you dispute that and have a
Well,
winning case?
yeah. That should be caught at the underwriter level. That's basically who should be raising those questions. I mean, you do have the right to put in a reconsideration of value. And usually those appraisals where you see people going outside our normal practices to ascertain a higher value, usually that's a red flag to underwriters. And this is to me, and I'll probably get a lot of blowback from underwriters, but underwriters were under immense amount of pressure pre mortgage meltdown 2007 to close as many loans as possible and as quickly as possible, because it kept everybody's money flowing in. All the people in the mortgage industry kept all their money going. But, underwriters supposedly police the appraisers, and they know how to send your appraisal report out for a review appraisal. We do those also, reviewing appraisers' work, peer work, and it should be caught at some point. And if you have a valid complaint, someone in that mortgage office, someone's doing loans, someone in finance should have that appraisal first thoroughly checked out, have
And
it
Steve,
reviewed.
let's be real. Like, everybody's so busy, and like you said, everybody wants to close the loans so fast, and nobody wants to take the extra time to look into your argument or your case. And I see it. I've seen it a few times. I mean, in the past, that I wanted to dispute an appraisal, but nobody's like, they throw it back to the appraiser, and the appraiser comes back with outrageous explanation why he cannot readjust. Maybe he or she do not want to look bad in front of the underwriter or in front of the
Right.
or whatever the case is. Where can you go after that? Like, if you get rejected the first time, can you escalate it to somewhere that?
Yeah, we have a bureau, a bureau of real estate appraisers, California.org, I think is the website. You could take it there, and because we have mandatory saving of our work files, I think it's up to 7 years, depending on if there's any pending litigation or anything going on. But we have to keep control and store all of our files. That way, if someone has a dispute, and if they take it to the Bureau of Real Estate Appraisers and they find out, yeah, this is horrible, they're going to go back to that appraiser and say, give me the work file you did for 36778 Spanish Broom Drive, because we have a complaint on that appraiser. And man, you could get fined, you could lose your license. So there's a place to go. It's in Sacramento. I've been there. Complain to them, because no real estate appraiser, especially now, wants to tell them that your license has been revoked for 3 months. You imagine not being able to make the money I'm making for 3 months would be like insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are things you do, but I've noticed that in appraisal also, it's also kind of like that thin blue line that police have. Some appraisers don't want to step on other appraisers' toes. It's like, man, just tell the truth. That's all our job is. Create credible results and be honest about it. Makes sense.
Awesome. Well, this question came in. I think it's for me and you, but we can both answer it. Do you believe more homes will be available in 2021 than the demand, in May 2021 than the demand? In my opinion, I believe we're going to stay like this. We're probably going to see more inventory, but it's going to be selling faster than it's hitting the market, especially this year. That's in my opinion, because I mean, the trend is going, and interest rate, it's not going to skyrocket it, even though it's going higher and higher, slowly but surely. But I believe we're going to still in a strong seller's market this year. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, I think pretty much the same thing. That deals with the absorption rate, at the amount of times that properties can be snapped up off the market, how fast they're selling. I don't think that KB Homes and some of these other builders, Frontier Homes, I don't think they're building fast enough to really have a big impact on property values for the foreseeable future. I mean, they'd have to be kicking out, developments a lot faster than they're doing right now. And I can count on one hand the developments that are currently actively building single family homes in the AV, Palmdale, Lancaster, basically. So yeah, it's gonna be a while before we get into that range to where there's people losing their homes or problems with the market. It's going to be a seller's market for a while.
Yeah, in my end, I mean, I'm seeing more sellers are open to list now, especially that California's opened back up, and there's a lot of people with that vaccine, like a lot of things are changing, and sellers are more comfortable putting their properties on the market. But still, even though that more sellers are putting their property on the market, there's high demand, and there's a lot of buyers out there. So they're going to be selling quick, and that's why we're not going to see the impact of how much more inventory we're getting, because they're selling super fast.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And I would say to some of those sellers, you're going to also need a place to live once you sell your home. So I'm hoping that you're going to leave California.
That's another subject, Steve.
Yeah, that's another subject. You would think with, they're trying to recall the governor. You would think with all the animosity towards this whole COVID and reopening and the infection rate, you would think that people who say they don't like California, they would sell their property and leave. But I don't really see that happening.
Yeah,
or else there'd be more homes on the market.
Right. I mean, we're seeing people leaving, but we're seeing people coming too. So
yeah,
we'll
that's
see.
That's going to always be the case.
Yeah, I love California. I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah. Just think, I vacation in Mississippi and live in California. So yeah, I love California too.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being on today. I know you're out of town, and we appreciate you taking the time to be with us and sharing your knowledge and your experience, and always being there for us. Thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Enjoy your rest of your vacation.
Yeah, I sure will. Thank you. And don't forget to put a plug in for my new comedy show at Transplant Brewing. Should be kicking off in about 2 weeks.
Love
Best
it.
comedy in the Antelope Valley. You don't have to drive to LA, Hollywood no more to see good comedy.
We're coming. We're coming to see you, Steve.
Okay.
Take care.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye.